Welcome back. It is Brunch Education Talk now to discuss the issues on education that has been happening this election week is Dr. Chris Imafidons. And Dr. Chris is described by the BBC as the father of the brainiest family in the world. Dr. Chris, you're very welcome to our studios today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And it's wonderful to have you here. Now, let's see what is happening. Quite a lot of things have been happening in education. But first of all, let's look at what Moadobuwa Bukicho has actually said. She said parents should be banned from smacking their children, and she's the deputy head of the Council of Europe. Moadobuwa Bukicho said a ban on physical chastisement would improve parenting skills, and parents at present can smack their children for the purposes of reasonable punishment. Now, why has Ms. Moad actually come up with such a drastic measure about how to chastise children by banning smacking?
It is unfortunate that she's campaigning without understanding the dynamics between the child, the parent, and the home environment. If she is a mother and has raised children, she won't say this. Or she probably might say it officially, but unofficially she will find out that there are situations that will require you to intervene. Because they say spare the rod and spoil the child. You cannot say because a child is a child, you will not administer any form of proportionate punishment. Not in anger, but as a way of saying clear message to the child that what you did yesterday was wrong, or what you did this morning was wrong. I personally don't smack my children, but in terms of punishment, it's not something that anybody debates. We all get punished. If you park on a double yellow line, you get an instant ticket. If you're on the red route, you get what? An automatic ticket. If you exceed the speeding limit, it triggers off the camera and the camera sends you a ticket. It is part of the society. The society needs to drive that into children that early. I know they've succeeded in banning smacking in institutions like schools, but for you to interfere with the home dynamics is something that you shouldn't. This is almost becoming a big brother government, that anything you do, before you sneeze, before you cough, you have to take permission from them. Especially when you look at the background of indiscipline today. What has happened to our streets? What has happened to our schools? And what is happening to our society? What is her solution to that? What does she want to say? How do we deal with the gun crime? How do we deal with the youth and knife crime? How do we deal with the issue of indiscipline in school? I mean, you cannot just sit down and say that because you are there's a law that forbids you from chastising the child. Why saying is that he who he loveth, he chastises it. If you love a child and you don't correct the child, you don't love the child. If you love a child and it's really your child, you want to be able to straighten the child if he goes off track or if he errs. So what is our solution to dealing with the youth delinquency that we have today?
Now let's look at her strategies. How does she intend to push this ban through?
Because she is in Europe, she wants to influence all the countries that belong to the EU, and has been campaigning. In some countries they've been, if you like, foolish enough to say they want to ban smacking wholesale. What is the alternative route of sending clear messages to a child that has done wrong? How do you correct? You cannot correct a child just by saying, oh, please don't do that again. At that stage, they don't respond to such pleadings. They still go into mischief, and they're still experimenting with all sorts of boundaries. You have to set clear boundaries at home and say, if you do this, these are the consequences. If you do this, these are the consequences. If you don't do this, this is what happens to you. So if you tell them, clear your plates, clear your room, do this, basic things at home, it is in children to want to undermine the authority of anybody at home. So if your child consistently undermines you, and then grows up to come and undermine you, and then becomes somebody that isn't responsible and becomes doesn't make any valid contribution to society, who has lost? What good is that child? So if you haven't disciplined the child, you haven't brought up the child to know boundaries, to respect authorities and to fear authority, you have failed in your role as a parent.
Let's look at our state schools here. Smacking has actually been banned in the state schools here in the United Kingdom. And there are other forms of corporal punishment that are actually being given to the children. Now, how effective have they been at actually disciplining these children?
It's not been effective. We all know that. We know the soaring rate of teenage pregnancy. We know what happens to boys when they are not Well, as soon as they get out of class, they get involved in a fight. We know the rate of gun crimes. We know the rate of knife crimes. When we look at the statistics, every single statistics that's been analyzed points back to one thing. There's a lack of indiscipline. Points back to one thing, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Comes back to one thing, that if you are there as a parent and all you can do is just smile, or if you're there as a teacher and all you can do is don't do that, the child does not understand that language. You've got to come with clear, forceful discipline and say, if you are unable to adhere to simple instructions, you're going to be in trouble. We've seen schools that are no-go areas. Children spray graffiti on their head teachers' cars in inner city schools. The police is aware of that. There are some schools in London, if you phone the police and you say you are in trouble and you are able to give them the exact location and they say the proximity to the school, the police will be reluctant to respond to your cry for help because they know that those are areas where the stronghold of crime. And they didn't get it when they were adults. They didn't get it when they were in their late teens. They got it right from when they were young. They say train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he cannot depart from it because he's been trained to do that way. Training requires discipline. There's nobody that has achieved in life, in any sphere of human endeavor, be it sports, be it music, be it education, that has not gone through training. And training is not a fun thing. Training means you're withholding back what you would have loved to do. You're sacrificing luxury, you're sacrificing the spirit of mischief, and you're doing what you're asked to do. You need that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris. Now, let's see what's been happening in the nation on education. Now, the nation is actually going to the ballot box tomorrow. And what are the three main parties actually saying about education? What are their policies when it comes to education?
It's sad because the main parties are not excited about education. They've forgotten that the greatest asset any nation can have is their universities. The only political party's manifesto that mentioned the university very frequently, regrettably, is the BNP, which is a shame because if a fringe party can put so much emphasis on education, what is happening to the key players in the political realm? They're shying away from it. It's almost a conspiracy. The Tory government said, oh, we'll make sure that we give power to head teachers and then we'll make schools, make it possible for parents to set up schools. That's what the Tories are saying. The Conservatives are saying, oh, we should be congratulated because we've done a lot, we've changed the last, Bull was saying that, oh, the schools have been transformed under a Labour government, and then the Lib Dem is saying, oh, we'll pump more money into schools, reduce class size, and then phase out the so-called tuition fee. But the two big parties have not come hard enough. They don't understand what recession is. After a recession, there is a boom. And when there is a boom, you don't have sufficient manpower that is trained to help the recovery. The biggest vehicle that will bring back any economic recovery is your resources. And when we're talking now, we're talking about human resources, intellectual resources, skilled men and young women. They don't seem to have focused on that enough. So it's a big disappointment because I would have expected them to come back and say, yeah, clearly in our manifesto, this is what we are going to do. We are going to expand university spaces. We are going to make sure that the secondary schools are going to set strict standards now and targets that must be achieved by secondary school. Set strict targets and standards that must be adhered to by primary school. No one seems to be doing that.
Talking about budget cuts for the universities now, let's see what's happening. Lecturers at 14 universities and further education colleges in England are staging a wonder strike over budget cuts, and that day happens to be today.
Yes.
Now let's take a look at the universities that are participating in this strike. We have King's College London, we have Westminster University, Sussex University. Is striking the best way that the lecturers can actually express their intent? Why are they going on strike?
I never support strike. I've never believed that such form of aggression yields anything. But I understand where they're coming from. I understand their sense of frustration because we are reducing the budget by £1 billion pounds. That's what the government is doing. And they're saying that the further education sector must also make a saving of over £340 million. Now, if you are pulling this amount of money out of the sector, it's going to completely collapse. Last year, we could not admit all the young men and women that wanted to come to university.